So I'm lucky to be joined today by Mr. Paddy Lee. Paddy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right. Obviously, as you just mentioned there, Morris, my name is Paddy Lee, and I was born in Dublin City, in a place called Perrystown, Dublin 12. And my history as my working career history, I suppose, started when I was 14 years of age. I went over and I signed for Manchester United for 2 years professional. So that was my start of my working career in soccer, I suppose. And before that, now I have to admit, my first trial was Tottenham Hotspur. I went over there. I won. It was called at the time a Lean Tui soccer school. So the winning prize was to go over to Tottenham Hotspur for about 3 days just to get to know what a footballer's life, I suppose, is like. So that was me introduction, obviously, to football as regards fame over in England or whatever, like, you know, the type of way.
And where did you go to school?
Now, I went to a school, my primary school was called St. Damian's. And then I eventually went to Green Hills College Secondary. Yeah. So I left there, obviously, after my junior cert, and I headed over to Manchester United then at that stage, you know, the type of way. So it was young when I went.
And was football always the thing you wanted to do from a young age?
Yeah, it was more or less. Now that I think about it, I have to admit I was never very, look, put it this way, I was never very interested in school. I was a very shy kind of kid when I was young. And I always remember, even when I used to go out into the yard and they'd be all playing football, like when I was 6, 7, 8 years of age. And I can always remember standing in the yard, and this is still in the back of my mind, you know, and kind of standing there, and I really didn't know what to do with the ball, you know. I was just literally standing there. And I always remember a friend of mine, Franner Griffin, who went to school with me. He was in my class, and he just said to me, actually, I met him there only a couple of years ago, and he just said to me, just goes, Paddy, it was amazing. It was like you used to just stand in the yard, and if the ball came to you, you really didn't know what to do with the ball. And he says, you came back after a summer when we were on our holidays, and he says that you literally, the ball just came to you in the yard, and you just got the ball and you just start beating everyone. Now, call it what you like, Morris, but as my friend or many people say about it was like a gift given to me, you know. Yeah. And look, if I was to put it in a nutshell, that to me, when I was a kid, earned me a lot of respect, because it kind of took away my shyness. I got respect in school because I wasn't getting respect from anybody in there or the teachers academically, you know.
Yeah.
So that was basically it, like, you know, that type of way.
And your first club then was Manortown?
Yeah, my first club was Manortown. I used to go up to a thing called the mini leagues up there, and I was always moithering my dad to bring me up there. At this stage, he didn't know how good of a footballer at such a young age I was, like, you know, but I was asking him to bring me up. So he eventually brought me up, and when he went up there, he was gobsmacked by the skill that I had at such a young age, which, like, the skill that I have now even is no different to the skill that I had that day in the schoolyard, you know. I wasn't taught it. No one taught me anything about it. It just came natural to me, you know. But so I played in the mini leagues, and eventually I played for Manortown. And Manortown were 2 or 3 leagues, I think, below the highest league at the time, you know. Yeah. So eventually, the likes of Home Farm and those type of clubs were coming in for me, you know, that type of way. And obviously Crumlin, that I eventually signed for, which is just literally 10 minutes away from my house, which I decided to sign for them because they were an unbelievable side, you know, that type of way. They were fantastic players. Like, we won the All-Ireland 4 years in a row. I think we're the only club that done it, if I'm correct, you know, that type of way. But I always remember that Home Farm gave me they asked me to sign. And to be honest with you, I got my nose up with Home Farm at the time, because I think one of the coaches or someone who represented the club came up to me and says, we don't ask everyone to come out here. And I just said to me, I says, look, I don't particularly like that, man, you know, that type of way. So eventually signed for Crumlin United, you know. So yeah.
When you were 13, then you went over to Spurs, as you touched on earlier. How did that come about?
Well, that, as I touched on earlier, I used to go to a lot of soccer schools. So my dad used to get me to go to these schools, really just to get me noticed.
Yeah.
And put me out there in the newspaper, that type of way. And I actually won the Lean to soccer school twice. And I know I'm doing a podcast now at this moment in time, and it's amazing how technology has been advanced, the type of way. But I actually done my first interview with a program called Joe Maxey.
Okay.
I don't know whether you remember it, and I got interviewed by Ray Darcy, and I was on that twice as well. And basically, the winning prize was you have a trip over to Tottenham and you go on trial. But at that age, I was only 12, I think, my first one was, and I think the second one was 13 or whatever. And I was very, very young. So when I went over there, it was really just training with the first team. We were staying in a hotel. We were introduced to the likes of Paul Gascoigne and everything like that when we went over there. And it was amazing just to see Gascoigne in his prime as well, when he was out there in Tottenham Stadium, and like what he could do with the ball and how he could entertain the crowd was just. He's a player of mine that I loved, the type of way. He had everything. He had the skill, he had the entertainment, and he loved everything about it. So Tottenham was just basically just a little taster, I suppose, just to see where I was going to go eventually, the type of way.
And was Tottenham, in comparison to the leagues over in Ireland, was it a huge step up in terms of coaching and facilities and things like that when you went over there?
Yeah, it was amazing. The facilities and the pitches were absolutely phenomenal. And look, even back then, I think it's going back nearly 26, 7 or 28 years ago, and the pitches are immaculate, the type of way. It's just, they have groundsmen that are full-time over there, the type of way.
Yeah.
And they're unbelievable. The pitches are just, as I said, immaculate. There's lunch at the lunch is provided for you. When you take your break, obviously in the training and stuff like that, that type of way. Now, I didn't train with many of the youths at the time, or the first or second team apprentices or anything like that. I was literally just thrown in with the first team, and as you know, it wouldn't have been that serious. I was only 13 at the time, so it was only a little feather, the type of way. But I think the Liam Toohey, who's the person who ran the soccer schools, I believe that was just because he could see the ability that I had, So going over there, having a look and seeing what it's like would obviously spur me on eventually as I grew older, the type of way. But yeah, the whole facilities that they had over there was absolutely amazing. And from the get-go, I loved it. And that's the lifestyle and the career I wanted.
And how did the Manchester United interest come about? How did you find out about that?
Well, when I was a kid, and obviously my name was going around, there were scouts obviously around looking at matches left, right and centre. Obviously, I was playing for Crumlin, who were an absolutely amazing team at the time, and there's a scout. The scout who was at Manchester United at the time was a man named Joe Corcoran, who was also on the FAI at the time. Now he's dead. He's dead now. God rest his soul. The type of way. So he obviously seen me play, and he was the first one to approach my father, who was chairman at Crumlin United at the time. And he obviously said, would he like to go over and go on trial for Manchester United, And it was brilliant for me, I suppose, because that was the team that I supported, I loved everything about Manchester United at the time, the type of way I used to. I think it was Lee Sharp was playing, and there was the likes of Dennis Irwin, and you had Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister. I just loved everything about Manchester United, the type of way, ever since I was a kid. But it was great, obviously, to get wind of that they were interested in me. So yeah, that was. I went on trial for Manchester United. And ever since I got that trial and I went over there, I didn't really have any interest in any other teams, even in Tottenham. Now, Tottenham never asked me to go back, But once Man United came in, that was the team that I supported. And that's the team that I was hoping that I could obviously join and make a career for myself with, that type of way.
It was like the dream call then.
It was the dream call, and I suppose it's the dream call for many kids out there, the type of way. It was unbelievable. But look, I was young, I was innocent. I could only see the big lights, I could only see the stadium, and I could only see the hype, And look, I didn't see anything else in that. The hard work from everyone in the club, from the security guards right up to the soccer players, the type of way, or to the boardroom. It's run immaculate, the type of way. So that once I got the call for those and the trial, that was it. I went over there and I trialed for them until eventually I signed for them,
Yeah. And Ferguson was an influential part in you signing for Man United.
Yeah, he was. Like, I always remember he came, and it's, you know what?
He came to your house.
He came to my house, yeah. He actually came to my house to have a word with my parents, the type of way. And I suppose that's what Fergie does, I suppose I should call him boss now, I suppose, but that's what he does. He comes to certain people's houses who he believes, I suppose, who he's attracted to as such with their skill. And maybe he obviously thought at the time that I was going to make it, the type of way. But he came to my house. It was grand. To be honest with you, I didn't even want to come in. I think at the time I think I was 14 at the time, 13, 14 or whatever. And I mean, I was obviously that type of kid that just wanted to be out with my mates. I didn't want to come and meet. I just wanted to be out in the streets. But my dad says, you have to come, this is Alex Ferguson. So I was shy as well. So I eventually came in. He shook my hand. He said hello to a few other people that came to the house because they knew he was coming. So we went in and he had a chat with me mother and father in the front room. And then he came out and he took a few pictures or whatever with a couple of people on the street as well. There was a few kids on the street. And then I always remember before he left, he got a ball. I think it was my ball at the time. And he basically says, he threw the ball up in the air and he balanced it. And he just goes, look, he says, if you can balance this ball by the time you come over or when you come over, I'll give you 20 quid. Now, that to me, I had that mastered in something like a day or two, and it wasn't even the money that interested me, but it was in the back of my mind. But when I went over there, I didn't even have the bottle to ask him, the type of way for the 20 quid. But it wasn't that. I just think that was a great salesmanship as well,
Yeah,
just
to get me over there.
I had all the tricks in the book, But anyway, so that was the experience I had when Alex Ferguson came over, type of thing, And he was lovely here when he was in the house. But I have to say, when he went over there, he was like a boss.
Oh yeah.
Like any job you're in, when it's work, he changes. Do you know the type of way? And he was nothing like he was when I met him in the front room.
What kind of jobs did he have you doing over there?
Well, the jobs that I had when I first went over there was I was on the first team dressing room.
Yeah.
So I had to keep that ship shape, And I was delighted with that because that was a great job to have because you're right in the heart of every single first teamer and all the players that you love watching, that type of way. And I also cleaned the boots over there. Now, we all done the boots, but I think I was on Brian McClare's. I think I was on, if I can remember rightly now, I was on Paul Ince, Peter Schmeichel, I was on Paul Parker's, Dennis Irwin's, and I don't know who else I was. It could have been, I was on, what was his name, Andy Cole's as well.
Yeah.
So I was on a good, pardon?
What were those guys like to work with?
Unbelievable now, I have to say. Now, look, I'll tell you the truth. Andy Cole was great. Andy Cole always had time for me, He always kind of, when I'd be cleaning the dressing room, he was near enough always the last to go because he was putting moisturiser on himself the whole time,
Yeah.
Putting it on his feet and everything. He always asked me, how are you getting on? Are you missing home or how's your parents? Anything like that. He was very, very helpful, Paul Parker, another fella that was a great man. Paul Ince, very nice. He used to call him the governor over there. Dennis Irwin, he was another person who always had time for me. Stood, had a chat with me for 5 and 10 minutes most days, the type of way. But the only person that I ever probably had a run-in with was Peter Schmeichel.
Okay.
Because whatever it was, I will tell the truth, I'm an honest fella.
Yeah.
Like there was days now when you go in there, you know, and you'd be eyeing up the boots. He had Hummel, and you'd look at them, and you'd be going, they actually look fairly clean, you know, and you wouldn't even clean them.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't get that away with the first teamers, you know, and all you'd hear is a big Norwegian voice shouting down the corridors at me name, you know, the type of way. Paddy, Paddy, my boots aren't clean, you know, the type of way. And I'd come down and be given out to me. And there was many a days that I missed training. Well, not missed training. I had to run over to training because I had to literally go in, clean his boots in front of him, and then obviously show him. And that's just the way. That's the pressure you would have been under just for the boots that you had to clean, you know, the type of way. And I mean, I suppose it's right. It's getting you ready for it, you know. You have to earn your trade as well, you know, the type of way. But yeah, I had like the two jobs I had, like I suppose the boots that I cleaned, all those professional footballers are great who I mentioned. And as I says, the first team dressing room was brilliant because you could literally be in there and you could be talking to all the stars, as they say, you know, the type of way.
Nowadays, they probably have a pair of boots for every match and fuck them in the bin afterwards.
Yeah, they probably would. Yeah. But look, in saying that as well, Morris, that's really for, I suppose, a lot of footballers would wear boots that maybe doesn't suit them and they probably aren't as comfortable in them, but they'll wear them because they're getting paid to wear them, you know, the type of way. Yeah. But personally, myself now, and maybe other professionals out there would be the same. Once I have a boot, you know, the type of way, I like to mould my foot into that boot, you know, and that boot to me is one boot I would literally love to hold on to for the rest of my life. And the more worn it becomes, the better of a boot it is. Because when we were younger as well, the first teamers used to come into the first team, the first year professionals and all. Yeah. And when they get new boots, you know, they literally go into the first team, the first year professionals, and they say, do you want to wear me boots for the next couple of days? So you're really breaking their boots in.
Molding them, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you'll be the one coming out with blisters, but you think you were great because you're wearing a new pair of Puma Kings or Copa Mundials, you know, the type of way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what would happen. But what I'm saying is about that is that the older the boot is and the more worn it becomes, it's molded to your foot, you know, and your touch is better. Yeah, of course, your touch would be better, look, you know.
How did you end up in Ferguson's book then? What story did he mention?
Well, the story that he mentioned now, and I remember at the time I was doing my leaving cert. I'd done a 2-year leaving cert down there in Pierce College, you know. And I remember coming home, actually finished one of the days, and I remember coming in and he says, look, Dad, he says, I'm heading out for a while, you know. And he says, don't go anywhere. And he says, I says, why? He says, the Irish Independent, I think it was, and someone else wants to speak to you from the papers. He says, Alex Ferguson is after mentioning you in his autobiography. And I was shocked. Because, look, I think it was 26 or 25 years later. And to me, that was like, to remember me after that length of time, I was gobsmacked myself, you know, the type of way. And I was getting very nervous and butterflies. And I honestly didn't know what I was going to say to the papers and this and that. Like, but the story, like, that he mentioned about me in his autobiography was, when I went over to Manchester United when I was a kid, I could do a lot of impressions, you know, that type of way.
Yeah.
And I could do any animal noise, you know. Well, not any animal noise. Most animal noises I could do. Like I could do the chicken, the sheep, the dog. I could do. I was also very good at doing Paul Daniels. He used to do Wisbit. I could do the cow. I could do. There was loads of things. I can't even remember now, you know. But it was one of those things that when I went, like I could do it before I went over there. But it was also great that I could do those noises, you know, because when you're 14 and you went over there, I suppose like you need an identity as well over there, you know, especially in times when your career or your football isn't going too well or you're going through injuries, you know, the type of way. Like at the time, like I suppose, like when I was over there was a lot of, like us as footballers used to have a lot of time on our hands, you know, the type of way. And at lunchtime, they used to have a thing over there called, it was called Fun and Games, you know. And it was a bit of banter between all the young players over there type of thing. And I suppose this is why I'm saying I was delighted I could do the animal noises, because, for instance, like when we were first year apprentices, you used to have to go into the dressing room type of thing, like, and they'd get you to do funny games like this. It's traditional, like, you know, the type of way. I'll mention one of them, like, I think it's tradition over there where Ryan Giggs actually does the voice for this, like, and what it is it's actually quite funny, you know. And what it is they get a mop, right? You know, a mop that you mop the floor with. And they have the mop there type of thing, and the mop is standing against the bench, you know, in the dressing room, and you basically have to chat the mop up as if it's a girl out in a nightclub, you know. So Giggsy does the voice of the mop.
He'd be well experienced with that, I think.
Yeah, well, you know what? I probably, over the years, I was well experienced. I've had a few mops in my time, like. But Morris, what I'm saying is that you used to have to chat the mop up, and then eventually you used to have to bring the mop home, and it was all just a big laugh, you know. But in order for me at that age, when I was 14, to get away from these fun and games type of thing that we used to have to do over there, they used to ask me to do the animal noises, you know. So I'd go through the whole rendition of my animal noises, you know. I'd do the chicken, the sheep, and they'd be all in stitches laughing, you know. And even when I was cleaning the first team dressing room, like Stevie Bruce, everyone, he'd be coming in every day, Paddy, come on in. You'd have the likes of Cantona, you'd have Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, Andrei Kanchelskis, you'd have Lee Sharp, Roy Keane, you'd have Andy Cole, Peter Schmeichel. I can't even remember half of them now. It was even more, like, you know. Yeah. And we'd be on the dressing room. When I was only 14, a little fella from Dublin, skinny, and I'd be standing there at the bench, and I'd just go through the whole animal noise that I could do, whiz-bit, everything I could do. And the next minute, they'd be all in stitches laughing. And I'd be pulled up to Ferguson's office as well to show the coaches and the physio staff. You know, the type of way. And the word got round the whole club, and eventually the security guard would be asking me to do these voices and animal noises to his family and his daughters, and on nights out and everything. That was all what they remembered me for over there. And go back to the book, Ferguson, that must have stuck in Ferguson's mind how much. And sometimes I think about it, Morris, I think, and I believe that even any of the pressures that the first teamers were under, for instance, say if they were to play Liverpool on Saturday or Sunday, they'd have me in the dressing room cleaning, when I was cleaning the dressing rooms, maybe on the Thursday and the Friday, and I'd go through all this. And I suppose in a way it would have taken the pressure off them and given them a good bit of a laugh, you know, the type of way. So, look, I know he never mentioned me as regards me soccer or me skill. But look, it is Alex Ferguson, and I don't know what else he remembers me by. Maybe he does remember me by me skill, but like, I'm flattered just to even get a mention in his book, you know, the type of way. Yeah. So it's brilliant. It's my 15 minutes of fame, I suppose.
Yeah, it's good, like, because I can't imagine too many people would got mentioned in that book from that level even.
Yeah, exactly, like at that level, you know. And I suppose there's a lot of footballers out there that would have been under him that probably would have likened a mention in that book.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to say. And that's how I felt at the time. I was honestly going, I can't believe he's remembered me. Maybe something else is in his mind. Maybe he actually remembers the skill that I had at that age, you know, the type of way. And I was just absolutely gobsmacked. So, look, if you put it in a nutshell, Morris, my name will never die.
Yeah.
When I'm gone off the face of this earth, my name will always be in a bookstore. You know,
people will still be reading his book anyway.
Yeah, exactly, in years, and they'd be reading for an education, you know, the type of way, because you can't argue with the fact that he is one of the greatest footballers that the world has seen.
Yeah.
So
he's probably the best manager in history, I reckon.
Oh, sorry, the managers, I apologise about that. Yeah. Managers in history, like, absolutely phenomenal, you know, the type of way. He had everything. Yeah. He had the mentality, the temperament. He was a good footballer in his day. And look, any club that he went to, he was very successful with, you know, the type of way. And that's just it. And it was absolutely a pleasure to have him as my boss for the 2 years, you know, the type of way. It was brilliant, like, you know, so I'm chuffed even to this day.
So over at Manchester United then, you hit a few stumbling blocks with injuries and the IBS as well. Do you want to talk to us through what happened? Or
Well, I'll start with the IBS. And it's, if anyone doesn't know what it is, it's the abbreviation for irritable bowel syndrome. And what it is it's, to be honest with you, I would have got it through stress. And that would have started when I was a young player, when I was the likes of 13 and 14. At that age, I was a very nervous type of kid. You know, I had a lot of fears and stuff like that, you know, and I probably found it hard as well to deal with pressures and stuff like that at that age, you know. Probably other kids could have dealt with it better. But I always remember when I was a kid that it was the likes of, like, my diet now, I couldn't eat the likes of white bread, you know. I couldn't eat cereal, anything with wheat flour or gluten or anything like that. I cannot eat now to this day, you know. And I wish I had known that when I was a kid. But when you're a kid, you don't even know what it is. And if you even mentioned it to anyone, everyone would say it's all in your head.
Yeah, it wasn't even a thing back then. You know, it's only the last few years.
Back then. Yeah, exactly. And to be honest with you, Morris, when I signed for Manchester United, I had this complaint, you know. Yeah. And all the food that they had over there at the time was all custard, pudding. It was white bread. It was white rice and curries when we had this at our lunch at Manchester United, you know. Now, it was nice food, like, but every time I was eating this food, I was getting full of wind, you know, and my digestive system wasn't working. And I always remember that I used to have to eat, like, literally fill myself out, because I could got rid of the cramps and stuff and the stitches, and I could go out and kind of get through it, you know, the type of way.
Yeah.
But it affected me moods, and it made me tired, and I couldn't focus as much. And look, as regards this complaint that I have, I literally didn't get to the bottom of this until I went over to Australia, I believe it was. And I think I was at the age of 26 when I started reading books on IBM or IBS, you know. And that's when I started to get my diet sorted. And what it is if you want to get rid of this complaint, if say today, if I didn't know what it was, and you have to go through your whole day's eating, and if you eat white bread and you don't feel comfortable, well, then you have to take that out of your diet. So I go down and I eat brown rice, boiled chicken or boiled broccoli or anything like that, and I've got great energy. I got up early and I can focus properly. And to be honest with you, I just wish I had known about that when I was a kid. I would have played better, I believe, anyway, you know. And another an injury that I had when I was over at Manchester United, really, I think it was starting to develop when I was at Manchester United. It was a hernia I developed.
Yeah.
And the reason why I believe I developed this type of injury is because I had very, very, very quick feet, you know, as regards my skill.
Yeah.
And what I should have done really was, what you have to do is, especially with the skill that I had with my feet that was so quick, I don't think I built my grinds up to be strong enough for how quick my feet were, if you know that type of way.
Yeah.
And it was only when I went to Middlesbrough that I think it started to get worse and worse. And I eventually had a hernia operation when I was in Middlesbrough, and it put me out for 3 weeks. And I always went down with a first team player, never forget it, Neil Cox. It was called, the injury that I had was called the Gilmore's groin, because the person who was the founder of that injury was a doctor named Professor Gilmore. And I always remember Martin Keown was getting a double hernia in the room across me. And I always remember at the time, I was actually nearly going to go into the room just to say hello, you know, just to see how he was. But I just said I'd leave it. But yeah, so that injury and other things that happened to me over there as regards sickness or anything like that. I had the hernia, the IBS, and I got my tonsils out when I was at Middlesbrough as well. So, no, sorry, I got my tonsils out when I was at Manchester United. Yeah. So, touch wood, to this day, any operation I've had was when I was at those two clubs, and I have never had an operation since. So if you look at the bright side of it, Morris, my dad never had to pay for me to go to hospital here, you know. So it's great.
The clubs pay for it.
Pardon?
The clubs pay for it.
Yeah, the club's paid for it. Yeah, so I always look at the funny side of that, the type of way. And I'm sure my dad looks at the savings that he had at the time. So so that was kind of the sicknesses. But look, all those things that I had was a learning curve as well.
Yeah.
Look, I went to Manchester United and I figured out through the pressure and the stress that it brought upon me that I developed IBS and I got to the bottom of it. And as I says, the injuries that I picked up over there, look, I've learned from everything like that as I've gone along the way, the type of way. So so that was everything as regards my injuries and sicknesses.
Do you watch much of the modern game now?
Now, if you're talking about, well, look, over the last, since this pandemic happened, I don't know what, I think it was 6 or 7 to 8 months ago or whatever, I haven't really watched much of it now. I think with the fans not being there has taken the wind out of the sails, the type of way, like anything, I suppose, in life for everyone, the type of way. But not so much now. And if I was to tell you the truth, as regards the Manchester United team in general, I don't particularly think they're that good. I'm not fond of watching them. I don't like their style. I used to love, obviously, watching them when the likes of, when I had left the club and left Middlesbrough, when the likes of David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt, who was a Phil Neville, Gary Neville, when all those players, because all those, and obviously those type of players would have been only a year above me.
Yeah.
So I would have known them, you know what I mean? They weren't too old, or I would have kind of seen them out in nightclubs and chatted to them on a daily basis. And I suppose even the likes of Ryan Giggs and all those other players that I mentioned, I would have known them as well. And they were a brilliant side. They won everything in their day.
Yeah.
And they were a class act, and they were good to watch. They were exciting, the type of way. So when they all started to retire, I suppose I didn't so much enjoy watching Manchester United as a whole. But I would obviously watch the likes of Liverpool and when Manchester United play and have a little look.
The big games.
Not so much, exactly, big games, the type, but not so much with the pandemic, the type of way. I haven't really watched much, the type of thing.
It's a different game now. There's a severe lack of leaders these days. It's not like it was back then anyway.
No, there is. You put that in a nutshell. There's a severe lack of leaders, I suppose, as well. But look, I suppose the game has changed a lot over the years.
It's all about this, Paddy.
Yeah, look, Morris, that's exactly what it is. It is all about money. And if you look at it, I think the likes of England, they look at exactly how they're going to promote the game and how they're going to make money. Even the likes of UEFA. The type of way. And they're looking over at, I suppose, America and stuff like that, because they're trying to promote it over there as well, because that's where the money is, broadcasting it over there with Sky, And look, the way the Americans roll is, even the more you look at the American football and all those games, like, I don't particularly think they're pretty to watch. But when you look at the scoreboards, it's 49 to 86, And that's what fans want to see. They want to see the goals and they want to see that. Because if you've no interest, you're certainly going to go for when you see a big score on the screen. Yeah. The type of way. And I think even with the football, like even you look at even kids in Australia. Like over in Australia, rugby league is it's one of the big sports over there, And the mothers and the fathers in Australia, what they do is, they have their young kids playing soccer at a young age. And then as they get older, they put them into rugby league. And the reason being is because they don't want to give them any severe injuries. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And what it is with football is, football has to be sold, even at amateur young clubs. So mothers over here are going to send and protect their kids, and they're going to send them to the likes of soccer more so than the likes of Gaelic, I think, and rugby, the type of way. And in England as well, it's not a nice game to watch or make money if there's horrific injuries in it.
Yeah. Like
you remember that player that Roy Keane done his leg. Do you remember that fella? He got the compound fracture. Yeah, that type of way. Yeah. Like, I mean, when you look at that, you turn away and you feel like getting sick.
Yeah.
And your man Mabba, I think, was the one that sealed the deal. when his eye, I think he got an elbow, you know, the type of way. So in going back to what you were saying, I think the game I think it's been ruined because those leaders go out of the game from the leaders me and you would know, you know, the type of way. A leader now, I think, has to be more technical of a leader. And the game is just a passing game now, you know, the type of way. But the way I see it is, Morris, it may go back to the way it was. Because I always look at and I know this is a bit deep in looking at something like this, but you look at the way they make cars. The cars at one stage over the years becomes a bubble and then it goes back to being sharp, you know, the type of way, whenever they can sell. If this doesn't sell over the next few years, they'll probably go back to bringing all those leaders and the hard players back, you know. And that's just the way it goes.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up on a story you have about Eric Cantona and the nightclub. Yeah. Take it away.
And the way it is, Morris, and as I said, it's going back many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
And when you look at going away as a footballer and what your highlights could have been or should be, my highlight, I believe, as a footballer was, I remember, like I used to go to the nightclubs, you know, when I was young. I think I was only 16 at the time and all, and I used to get into these nightclubs where only the stars used to be, you know, especially on a Wednesday night. I forget the name of the nightclub, but you'd have all the cast from Coronation Street, EastEnders, you know, there'd be all game show hosts and everything like that. And I used to get in with the likes of Keith Gillespie and stuff like that, you know, it was brilliant. And I always remember being there, you know, and I was only, I think, 16 or 17 at the time. And I used to be in the club every day, you know, and Cantona couldn't speak good English. And he'd say hello to me or whatever in the club. He'd never speak to me. And you'd never think a fella at my age would even get acknowledged by Cantona, even in the club. And I always remember one night, Cantona, I hope I don't get him into trouble by saying this, you know, that type of way. But I always remember standing there. And Eric obviously came into the nightclub, all the heads turned, and I never forget, he was about 6'4", a massive man, you know, he was a pure athlete, you know, and I always remember him came in and he looked at me and he just nodded his head and I nodded my head to him and he walked on, and I never forget, obviously looking at him where he went over to his own private booth and he had two girls there with just loads of drink, but it was just brilliant to get acknowledged from Eric Cantona, who's, look, fantastic player, a fantastic leader. And you know what? I think the thing I most love about him is because he had an attitude.
Yeah.
You know, that type of way. He wasn't squeaky clean. He was human like anyone else. You know, the type of way. He was always kind of, even in the French team, there was always something happening in there where he was let go from the French team because it was something to do with politics in his mind and stuff like that. And that's what I loved about him. He had a character, you know, the type of way. He wasn't this squeaky clean player who you'd probably see today. To me, and I know it's an awful thing to say, or it could be a good thing to say, but that bores me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was a character. He was himself. And that's what made him the player he was. And obviously is today, if he is still playing in his five-a-sides, you know, that type of way. So yeah, it was brilliant. It was a highlight. It was brilliant. But look, Morris, to me now, that's a highlight of mine. I wish the highlight had have been me scoring against Liverpool in the FA Cup final, had I made it as a professional. But I have different memories and different highlights of my career to hold on to. But I've still got something to hold on to.
Exactly, and that's the most important thing. It was great chatting to you, Paddy.
Yeah, it's brilliant as well, Morris, and thanks very much for taking the time to do this interview. It's been brilliant. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Thank you, Paddy.
Thanks very much, Morris. God bless.